NATO backing up its new commitments in Europe with a show of force. Nearly 6,000 troops from 17 countries conducting military exercises in Germany, only days after a summit wrapped up in Wales. The drills are an annual event, but they're taking on new urgency this year in light of Vladimir Putin's aggression in Ukraine. So far, the Russian leader seems unimpressed. Military maneuvers and economic sanctions appear to be failing to force him to change course as he keeps the Red Army poised for more action in Eastern Europe. So what, if anything, can stop him? Jonathan Schanzer is Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and a former terrorism analyst at the Treasury Department. Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, what we've done so far, in your estimation, is it having any impact, even the slightest?
Well, I mean, I think there have been a couple of sanctions that have been levied that I think have certainly hurt Putin, and I think there's been some pressure, but clearly it's not been enough. We have not seen the kind of pressure that has forced Mr. Putin to stand down.
Okay, so I know that you've talked about SWIFT. Our viewers may not be exactly familiar with what that is. Tell us about what it is and why you think in this case it could be a critical tool.
Sure. This is the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, otherwise known as SWIFT. It is an encrypted service that allows banks to talk to each other. And pretty much any time you want to wire money anywhere around the world, odds are you're going to have to use SWIFT. We put some pressure on this conglomerate of banks back in 2012 to put significant pressure on Iran. In my opinion, it was this painful maneuver that forced Iran to come to the table. We're now hearing that members of Congress, specifically Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois, is considering similar pressure on SWIFT right now to push Mr. Putin into a corner.
Okay, so if Congress chooses to navigate this, then obviously the administration would have to be behind this idea. What level of impact would it have on Russia? Would they be able to work around it with their finances, with bank transfers in another way that may sort of take some of the teeth out of it?
Well, I think, first of all, I mean, there are not many other systems that are out there like that. There's a European system known as Target 2, which, by the way, could also follow the lead of SWIFT and make things even more painful. That said, we're hearing right now that the Russian Duma is now weighing a measure that would allow for Russia to create its own parallel SWIFT system so that it could continue to operate if, in fact, these sorts of sanctions and pressure maneuvers are placed on Russia. But I don't know how long it would take for that to stand up, nor am I convinced that it would be a thoroughly effective measure.
I want to ask you, too, about ISIS and Russia and how those two may interplay together. There's been an ISIS video specifically directed at Vladimir Putin, just like the ones that we've seen mentioning our president, and issuing a direct challenge to Russia to get involved in what they're now carrying out, and saying they have ambitions that also would involve Russian territory. How likely is it, do you think, that they would get Putin's attention with what they are now fanning?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's one area of possible cooperation. And by the way, this is something that we've seen across the board, that even adversaries or enemies of the United States have at least considered teaming up to fight this ISIS phenomenon. This seems to be maybe one piece of common ground, but I think that there's a lot to be worried about with regard to Mr. Putin, regardless of what happens with ISIS.
Do you think Putin has anything to worry about? Do you think that he's at all fazed by anything that the Europeans or the U.S. are talking about doing to him at this point?
Look, I think that there has been some impact on Russia's economy. I think that there have been some nerves that have been rattled. Some of Mr. Putin's cronies have certainly been shaken up by some of the measures taken by the U.S. Treasury. Again, that said, I am not convinced that Mr. Putin is ready to stand down. He appears convinced that he can continue to test the United States, to test NATO, and to test the Europeans with this adventurism in the Ukraine.
He does seem very confident. All right, Jonathan Schanzer, thank you very much.
Pleasure.